In today's gospel reading, we have an account of our Lord freeing two individuals who are possessed from their possessions. And as we see in the reading, the demons request permission to go into the herd of swine. And then once the demons enter the swine, they rush down a steep bank into the sea and perish, are basically destroyed. And this is exactly what demonic beings want to do. They want to bring about the destruction of all the things that God has created, especially of human beings. So these two demoniacs, what would have ended up happening to them had they not been delivered? Very possibly they would have went from bad to worse. In other words, their lives become so miserable, they become so distressed, they stop trusting in God, they give up hope, basically. They give in to despair, and very often they commit suicide, which is what the demons often incline them to do, just to give up hope, commit suicide, and they kind of give a false promise, oh, you'll be at peace, which of course is totally false. If you end up in hell, you are definitely not at peace. I mean, imagine someone who's filled with great hatred and rage. Are they at peace? No, their minds keep playing over what happened, and they just fantasize about hurting the person who hurt them, and so on and so on. So, fortunately, these two demoniacs were delivered. And notice the people, however, they're not pleased about this. In fact, they ask our Lord to depart from that place. Now, note how it mentioned that these two demoniacs were so fierce that no one could pass that way. In other words, they attacked people and perhaps had the intention of even killing them. In other words, these demoniacs were causing great harm, and yet the people want our Lord to go away once they're delivered from this potential great harm. Why is this? The reason is because they were too attached to their possession. I mean, think of the owner of the swine. Well, he's out of luck, right? He's lost his possession, his source of income. The people of the town, well, this herd of swine was also their source of food. So they would have had to pay the owner, yes, but it would have provided them with food for a long period of time. And they're deprived of all of these things. And this ought to bring to our mind the question, what is more important, or what do we love more? Our possessions, our worldly position, or do we love human beings? Do we love our neighbor as ourselves, even though they may be our enemies, or they may be so repulsive as these two demoniacs were? What sacrifice are we willing to make to save the souls of human beings? I mean, think of Christ. He is God incarnate. So God, as St. Paul tells us, he emptied himself of his divinity. In other words, he divested himself of his eternal glory, of his magnificence, of his power, even though he manifested some of his power by means of his miracles, the transfiguration, things like that. But he humbles himself, and he gives his life completely for us, for our souls, to save our souls from hell. And even if it was for just one human being, he would have done that. In other words, he thought of you. He thought of each one of us. He died for each one of us. He gave himself completely, everything that he had. And he continues to give himself completely, especially in the Eucharist. Imagine if God posed a question to you and said, there's this demoniac, and this person is in very bad shape, and if you don't help him, he's going to end up in hell for all eternity. But you have the ability to help save his soul. All you have to do is to give up all your possessions. Would we do that? Probably not. We would make excuses. Oh, Lord, there must be some other way. Maybe other people can contribute also. I will be very generous. I will give much. I will give from my abundance, but I will not give all. So that's what probably most of us would say. But the reality is that God is not going to ask this of us, at least not most of us. It is true that when young people commit to pursuing a vocation to the priesthood or to the religious life, in many ways they are giving up everything in order to serve God, but also in order to save souls. And this is very admirable. And it's very beautiful, and it's wonderful that, people are still responding to the call for religious vocations in this fashion. But the point I'm trying to make is that we tend to be very attached to our possessions and to the things of this world. And we need to remind ourselves that human souls are more important. Our relationship with people, how we interact with them, is far, far more important than our own personal comforts or the possessions that we have. So we need to consider, okay, what are we willing to do to help save souls? Our Lady of Fatima mentioned that many people go to hell simply because there is no one to pray for them. So simply making the effort to pray for the salvation of souls, the salvation of sinners, the conversion of non-believers, simply by praying, we're doing a tremendous amount. But the ideal is that we try to be generous both in serving God and in serving our neighbor.